The ring was already in his hand. Platinum band. Simple. The kind of ring that costs more than most people's cars, but looks like it costs nothing, because that is what real money does. It stops needing to announce itself. The pastor had just said the words, "Do you take this woman?" And that was as far as he got. Because from the back of the grand ballroom of the Sovereign Hotel in Buckhead, Atlanta, a voice cut through the ceremony like something thrown. Small voice. Enormous volume. "Don't marry her." 3 words. The pastor stopped. The groom stopped. 400 guests turned simultaneously in their seats, the collective motion of people who have just heard something so unexpected that their bodies responded before their minds could. At the back of the ballroom, standing between 2 columns of white orchids that were taller than she was a little girl. 2 years old, maybe 3, dark pigtails, a white event staff apron that clearly belonged to an adult tied around her waist because someone had fashioned it into a makeshift dress. 1 small sneaker on, 1 small sneaker off, a half-eaten bread roll clutched in 1 fist. She was looking directly at the altar, at the man holding the ring. "Don't marry her," she said again, quieter this time, but the room was so silent that everyone heard it anyway, and then she held up the bread roll toward him, like an offering, like a solution, like the most reasonable alternative she could think of. "Hey, welcome back, everyone. I am so glad you are here. This is the place for stories that reach inside you and rearrange something. Stories about truth arriving at exactly the wrong moment and turning out to be exactly right. Before we begin, I want to know, where in the world are you watching from right now? Drop your city and country in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you have not subscribed yet, please do it right now, because what happens in the next 40 minutes of this story is something you will not see coming from any direction. Stay until the very end. I promise you it is worth it. Let's go. There are 2 Atlantas. There is the Atlanta of the billboards on I-25, the Atlanta of Buckhead towers and rooftop restaurants, and the particular energy of a city that has decided it is the capital of Black excellence and new American money, and is not wrong about either. The Atlanta where the valet line at a Saturday night restaurant looks like a music video, and the conversation at every table is about the next deal, the next project, the next level. And then there is the other Atlanta, the Atlanta of the people who make the first Atlanta possible, who set the tables and clean the rooms and staff the events and drive home at 2 in the morning on the MARTA to apartments in College Park and Decatur and East Point and wake up and do it again, who are present at every celebration that the first Atlanta throws and invisible in every photograph taken at those celebrations. Her name was Deja. Deja Washington, 29 years old, born and raised in Southwest Atlanta, the daughter of a woman who had cleaned hotel rooms at the airport Marriott for 18 years, and a father who had been present until Deja was 7 and then was not. She had grown up in a house where money was always the third person in every conversation. How much was needed, how much was short, what could be moved around to make the month work. She had grown up watching her mother perform the specific miracle of making not enough into enough, over and over, with a consistency that Deja had only understood was miraculous when she was old enough to try it herself. She was a hospitality worker, event staff, catering, hotel banquets. She had done all of it across 7 years of working the celebration circuit of Atlanta's wealthiest families. She knew how to move through a room of 400 people without being seen. She knew how to refill a champagne glass from behind a guest's right shoulder without interrupting their sentence. She knew how to appear in the exact moment something was needed and disappear the moment it was delivered. She was exceptional at all of it. She was working the Caldwell Merritt wedding because she needed the money, not because she was desperate. She was not. She was practical. The wedding paid double rate because it was a Saturday, and it was Buckhead, and it was the kind of event that required experienced staff who understood that the difference between a good event and a great event, was invisible precision. Deja understood invisible precision the way musicians understand rhythm, not as a concept but as a physical thing, felt in the body. She had arranged childcare for her daughter Ava 3 days ago. The childcare had fallen through this morning. At 6:45 a.m., the wedding started at 2 p.m. Deja had spent exactly 45 minutes on the phone trying to find an alternative before she had run out of alternatives and run out of time, and made the decision that she would spend the rest of the day managing. She would bring Ava. Ava would stay in the service corridor behind the ballroom. Deja had arranged it in her head with the precision of a military operation. The service corridor connected to the catering staging area, which had a small break room with a television and a couch and a door that locked. Ava would be in the break room. Deja had packed the bag, the tablet with the downloaded shows, the snacks, the stuffed giraffe named Gerald, the backup snacks in case the first snacks were rejected, the change of clothes, everything required to keep a 2-year-old content and contained for 5 hours. She had explained the plan to Ava during the MARTA ride-in. Ava had listened with the focused seriousness she brought to all information she intended to process and then ignore. "Gerald comes?" she had asked. "Gerald comes," Deja had confirmed. "Okay," Ava had said, and she had looked out the MARTA window at Atlanta passing by, with the expression of someone who had agreed to terms but reserved the right to renegotiate. The Sovereign Hotel in Buckhead was the kind of venue that made other Atlanta venues feel like they were still trying. 40 floors of glass and steel above Peachtree Road, with a grand ballroom on the 32nd floor that had floor-to-ceiling windows looking out over the city in every direction. Downtown to the south, the perimeter to the north, the whole spread of Atlanta visible like a map of everything the city had decided to become. The Caldwell Merritt wedding had taken the entire floor. 400 guests, white orchids everywhere, columns of them, arches of them, tablescapes built from them, the specific extravagance of a flower used in a quantity that transformed it from beauty to statement. The kind of wedding that had been featured in Atlanta magazine before it happened because the people involved were significant enough that their wedding was news. The groom was Marcus Caldwell, 36 years old. Third-generation Atlanta money. His grandfather had built the Caldwell construction empire from a single contract in the 60s. His father had turned it into a development company that had shaped the physical face of the city for 30 years, and Marcus had taken all of it and pivoted into technology infrastructure, data centers, fiber networks, the invisible architecture that made the digital city run. He was worth something that required more zeros than most people were comfortable thinking about. He was not what Atlanta expected from a Caldwell. He was quieter, less interested in the rooms his name opened than in the work those rooms were supposed to enable. He had his grandmother's face, open, warm underneath the composure, and his grandfather's stubbornness, which expressed itself not as aggression, but as a specific inability to pretend something was fine when it was not. He had been engaged to Priya Merritt for 14 months. Priya was 34, beautiful, the daughter of one of Atlanta's most prominent Indian American families, a woman who moved through the world with the fluency of someone who had been raised to inhabit exactly the spaces she inhabited. She was accomplished, a senior partner at a boutique investment firm, genuinely intelligent, the kind of person who made every room she entered feel more significant. She was also, in the specific way that very controlled people sometimes are, someone for whom other people's feelings were data points to be managed rather than experiences to be shared. Marcus had understood this about her for approximately 8 months. He had been managing that understanding for approximately 8 months because he had made a commitment. Because 14 months of planning, because 400 guests on the 32nd floor of the Sovereign Hotel in Buckhead with white orchids in every direction, and his grandmother in the front row, and Atlanta magazine already having run the preview piece. He was standing at the altar holding a platinum ring and telling himself that understanding was enough. That understanding, combined with respect and shared values and compatible ambitions, was what marriages were actually built on. That the other thing, the thing he couldn't name but knew was absent, was something people romanticized beyond its actual importance. He was almost convincing himself. The pastor said, "Do you take this woman?" And the voice came from the back of the room. "Don't marry her." In the 12 seconds of complete silence that followed, Marcus Caldwell did not turn around immediately. He looked at Priya first. Priya was looking past him toward the back of the room, with an expression that Marcus had seen exactly once before. The time a junior associate had made a significant error in a client presentation, and Priya had looked at him across the conference table with a specific, contained, temperature-dropping fury that had communicated everything without a word being spoken. She was looking at the back of the room with that expression now. Marcus turned. He saw the little girl, 2 years old, maybe 3, dark pigtails, the adult event apron fashioned into a makeshift dress, one sneaker on, one sneaker off, a half-eaten bread roll raised toward him in one small fist. He looked at her for a long moment. Something moved across his face that nobody at the altar could quite read. He turned back to Priya. "Whose child is that?" Priya said. Her voice was completely controlled. The control costing something. "I don't know," the pastor said. "Somebody find her mother," Priya said. Still controlled. "And remove her." From the service corridor doorway, Deja had heard everything. She had been mid-tray when it happened. 45 minutes into the ceremony, Deja had gone back to the staging area to collect the next round of passed items for the cocktail reception that would follow, and she had opened the break room door to check on Ava and found the break room empty. The tablet was there. Gerald the stuffed giraffe was there, propped against the couch cushion as though standing watch. The backup snacks were untouched. Ava was not there. The door to the service corridor was slightly open. Deja had moved fast and silent, the way she moved through events, because noise was not something she could afford right now. She had gone through the service corridor. She had reached the ballroom entrance. She had arrived at the service door just in time to hear her daughter's voice fill the entire 32nd floor of the Sovereign Hotel. "Don't marry her." Deja had pressed herself against the service door frame. She had looked through the gap. She had seen Ava at the back of the ballroom between the orchid columns, bread roll raised, looking at the altar with the absolute certainty of a child who has identified a problem and proposed a solution and is waiting for the adults to catch up. She had heard Priya's voice. "Remove her!" Deja had stepped through the service door immediately. She moved fast, and she moved quiet, down the side aisle, reaching Ava in 15 seconds. She crouched down beside her daughter without making eye contact with anyone, her face composed and professional, every muscle in her body focused on the task of making this as small as possible. "Ava," she said quietly, "come with Mama." Ava looked at her. She looked at the altar. She looked at the man holding the ring. "He looks sad," she told Deja seriously. "Ava, Mama, he looks sad," she said again. The particular insistence of a child who has identified something true and needs the adults to acknowledge it before she can move on. And she, Ava pointed at Priya, direct and unambiguous. "She has a mean face." 400 people heard this. Deja closed her eyes for exactly 1 second. She opened them. She stood up, took Ava's hand, and turned to face the room with the composed dignity of a woman who has survived worse than this, and will survive this too. "I apologize," she said. To the room, to the altar, to no one specifically, and everyone simultaneously. She won't be heard from again. She began walking toward the service door. She had taken 4 steps when the voice came from the altar. "Wait." 1 word. Quiet enough that only the people near the front heard it clearly. But the room was so still that it carried. Marcus Caldwell had said it. He was still holding the ring. He was looking at Ava. Ava was looking at him. Deja stopped. She turned slowly. Marcus stepped down from the altar platform. 1 step. 2. He walked down the aisle between the seated guests. 400 people watching in complete silence. The white orchids on either side of him, the Atlanta skyline visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind the altar. He walked to where Deja and Ava were standing at the back of the room. He crouched down, right there in the aisle of his own wedding, in his wedding suit, in front of 400 guests and an Atlanta magazine photographer and his grandmother in the front row. Marcus Caldwell crouched down to the level of a 2-year-old girl with 1 sneaker on and a bread roll in her fist. He looked at her face. "Hey," he said. His voice was completely gentle. "What's your name?" Ava studied him for a serious moment. "Ava," she said. "Hi, Ava. I'm Marcus." He looked at the bread roll. "Is that good?" Ava looked at the bread roll. She considered the question with appropriate seriousness. "It's okay," she said. "The other one was better." "What was better about the other one?" "It was warm," she said. "This one got cold." "That's fair," Marcus said. "Cold bread is disappointing." Ava nodded, relieved that he understood. "Marcus," Priya's voice came from the altar. Still controlled, still precise, but the precision trembling slightly at its edges. "What are you doing?" Marcus did not look at Priya. He kept his eyes on Ava. "Why did you say don't marry her?" he asked her. Gentle, genuinely curious. The question of a man who actually wants to know. Ava thought about this. She looked at Priya at the altar. She looked back at Marcus. "Because you were holding the ring," she said, "and you looked like how Mama looks when she has to do something she doesn't want to do." The room was completely silent. Marcus stayed crouched. He looked at Ava for a long moment. "How does your mama look?" he said carefully. "When she has to do something she doesn't want to do." Ava looked at Deja. Deja was standing very still beside her daughter, her face composed and professional, and completely closed. Every internal alarm she had going off simultaneously. "Like that," Ava said, pointing at her mother. "But her eyes go different." Marcus looked up at Deja. Deja looked back at him, and in the look that passed between them, 2 strangers, a ballroom full of 400 people, a wedding ring still in his hand, something happened that neither of them had planned for, and neither of them could have explained if asked. Recognition. Not the recognition of people who have met before. The other kind. I need to stop here for just a second, because if something just shifted in your chest reading that, you are not alone. This is the moment this whole story has been building toward, and we are only halfway there. Hit that like button right now if this story has you. It takes 1 second, and it sends this to someone who needs it today. And subscribe if you haven't already, because the second half of this story is where everything changes. Okay, back to the ballroom. "Marcus," Priya said again, and now the control was gone from her voice, replaced by something rawer. "There are 400 people in this room." Marcus stood up slowly. He looked at Ava one more time, then he looked at Deja. "I'm sorry," he said to her, "for the disruption this has caused for you." "I'm the one who's sorry," Deja said. Professional, composed, the armor that 7 years of working other people's celebrations had built, intact and complete. "It won't happen again." "No," he said, something in his voice. "I meant, I'm sorry you're in this position, right now, in front of all these people." Deja looked at him. She had not expected that. "We're fine," she said. "I know you are," he said. And something about the way he said it, not as reassurance but as observation, the way you say something about a person you have somehow already understood, made Deja's professional armor do something it almost never did. It shifted, just slightly, just enough for her to see that he had noticed it. He turned around. He walked back down the aisle toward the altar. 400 people watched him. He reached the altar platform. He stepped up. He stood in front of Priya. He looked at her for a long moment. Priya looked back at him, and what was on his face was not anger, was not embarrassment, was not the performed composure of a man managing a situation in front of 400 witnesses. It was the face of a man who has been shown something true and cannot pretend he has not seen it. "I can't do this," he said, not loudly, but the room was so silent that every single person heard it. Priya stared at him. "Marcus, I have been trying," he said. "For 8 months I have been trying to believe that what I understood was enough, that the other thing didn't matter, that I was romanticizing something that wasn't real." He paused. "A 2-year-old just showed me that it was real, that I do know the difference, that I have known for 8 months. "You are ending our engagement," Priya said, "because of a toddler." "I am ending our engagement," Marcus said quietly, "because of the truth. She just happened to say it first." Priya looked at him for a long moment. She was the most composed person Marcus had ever known, and in this moment she was completely composed, which was, he thought, the saddest possible response. She picked up her bouquet from where it rested against the altar. She looked at him. "You were always going to do this," she said. "I knew it 6 months ago. I was hoping you'd figure it out before today." He stared at her. "Why didn't you?" "Because 400 guests," she said simply. "And Atlanta Magazine." A pause. "And because I thought you might actually get there. To being enough." She said it without cruelty, just with the precision of someone stating facts. "You never got there." She walked off the altar platform. She walked down the side aisle, not the center. A small dignity, choosing the quieter exit. She walked out through the ballroom doors. They closed behind her. The room was silent. Marcus stood at the altar alone with a platinum ring in his hand and 400 witnesses and his grandmother in the front row and the Atlanta skyline in every window and a 2-year-old girl at the back of the room eating the rest of her cold bread roll with complete focus. If you are watching this and something in Priya's last words just hit you, I was hoping you'd figure it out before today. Leave a comment right now, because that line carries something most people will recognize from their own lives. Have you ever known something was over before the other person did? Tell me below, and share this story right now with someone who needs to hear it today. One tap. Let's keep going. What happened in the following 30 minutes was something that Deja observed from the service corridor doorway because she had taken Ava back through the service door the moment Marcus turned toward the altar, and she had watched through the gap in the door as the ballroom navigated the particular complicated choreography of 400 people who have just witnessed something they did not expect and are not sure what to do with. The guests had begun to move, talking in low voices, some leaving, some gathering in small clusters near the orchid columns. The catering manager, a sharp woman named Beverly, had materialized at Deja's shoulder within 60 seconds. "Is your daughter okay?" Beverly asked. "She's fine," Deja said. "I'm sorry. It won't—" "I'm not asking about liability," Beverly said, which was the most surprising thing anyone had said to Deja in several months. "I'm asking if she's okay." "She's fine," Deja said again, softer this time. "She's eating bread." Beverly looked at Ava, who was indeed eating bread with complete equanimity on the break room couch with Gerald the giraffe in her lap. "The reception is canceled," Beverly said. "We'll still pay full staff rate. It's not your fault." "Thank you," Deja said. She should have felt relief. Full rate, early finish, the crisis contained. She felt something else instead, something unsettled, the specific feeling of a moment that has not finished yet. She was packing Ava's bag when the knock came on the break room door. She opened it. Marcus Caldwell was standing in the service corridor in his wedding suit, his tie slightly loosened, the platinum ring no longer visible. He looked like a man who had just walked through something large and was still finding his footing. Behind him, At the end of the corridor, she could see his grandmother, a small, sharp-eyed woman in a silver dress, watching with the expression of someone who has seen many things in a long life and finds this particular thing interesting. "I'm sorry to come back here," he said. "I asked where you were." Deja looked at him. "Mr. Caldwell, Marcus, we were just leaving," she said. "The armor back up. Professional. Complete." "I know," he said. I wanted to apologize. In person. Without 400 people watching." He paused. "What happened today? Being put in that position in front of everyone. That was not fair to you or your daughter." "We're fine," Deja said. "You keep saying that. Because it's true." "It might be," he said. "But you've been saying it in the same voice you use when you're managing a situation. I've been watching you manage situations all afternoon. You're very good at it." A pause. "This is not a situation. I'm just talking to you." Deja looked at him. Ava appeared at Deja's hip, having relocated from the couch without announcement. She looked up at Marcus. "You didn't marry her," she observed. "No," Marcus said. "I didn't." "Good," Ava said. She held Gerald up toward him. "You can hold Gerald if you want. He helps." Marcus looked at the stuffed giraffe. He took him. He held him with both hands. Seriously, the way a person holds something they understand is being offered in earnest. "Thank you, Ava," he said. Ava nodded, satisfied. She went back to the couch and picked up her bread roll and resumed eating with the focused contentment of someone whose work here was done. Marcus looked at Gerald. He looked at Deja. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "You can ask," she said. "When she pointed at you," he said. "When Ava showed me how you look when you're doing something you don't want to do, what were you not wanting to do in that moment?" Deja looked at him for a long time. The service corridor was fluorescent lit and narrow, and it smelled like catering trays and the particular backstage smell of a large event. Nothing romantic about it, nothing staged, just two people in a corridor having an honest conversation because a 2-year-old had made honesty unavoidable. "I didn't want to apologize," Deja said finally, "for her being there, for her saying what she said." She paused. She didn't do anything wrong. She saw something true and she said it. That's all she did. Marcus looked at her. "What did she see?" he said. "That was true." Deja looked at him for a moment. "That you were sad," she said. "Was I?" "You were doing what sad people do," she said, "when they've decided that doing the thing in front of them is easier than stopping." Marcus was quiet for a moment. 7 years, he said, of working events. 7 years, she confirmed. "You've watched a lot of people do that." "I've watched a lot of people do everything," she said. "When you're invisible in a room, people stop performing. You see what's actually there." "What did you see today?" he said. Before she said anything, Deja looked at him. She could have deflected. She was very good at deflecting. 7 years of professional invisibility had made her excellent at being present without being known. But something about the service corridor, the fluorescent light and the catering smell, and Gerald the giraffe in this man's hands, made deflection feel like too much work. "A man trying to convince himself," she said simply. Marcus looked at her for a long moment. "Yeah," he said quietly. "That's accurate. Right here. This is the moment I want you to pause on. 2 strangers in a service corridor telling each other the truth because a child made pretending impossible. If this story is hitting something real in you right now, share it. Right now, with one person who needs to hear it. And drop a comment below. Have you ever had a moment where someone saw through everything you were performing and just said what was true? I want to know, because those moments are the ones that change everything. Okay, let's finish this story. He came back the next day, not to the Sovereign Hotel, to the catering company's offices on Marietta Street, where Deja was picking up her payment for the previous day's event. He was standing outside on the sidewalk in jeans and a plain dark jacket, looking significantly less like a Caldwell than he had at the altar, which was the version of him she found considerably easier to look at directly. "How did you know where—" she began. "Beverly," he said, "the catering manager. I asked her. Beverly told you." "Beverly," he said, "told me that if I was going to waste her time, she would have opinions about it. And then she told me." Deja looked at him. "Mr. Caldwell, Marcus, what are you doing here?" He looked at the sidewalk for a moment, then at her. "I don't know how to do this," he said. "I have no idea how to do this in a way that isn't— I know how this looks. I know what yesterday was. I know that showing up here probably seems like— It seems like you don't know what you're doing," Deja said. "That's accurate," he said. "But you came anyway. Ava told me cold bread was disappointing," he said. "And I have been thinking about that for 18 hours. About the fact that someone brought your daughter to a 12-hour catering event and packed backup snacks and a stuffed giraffe and made a dress out of an apron, and that child still managed to be the most honest person in a room of 400. And I keep thinking—" He stopped. "I keep thinking I would like to know the person who raised that." Deja looked at him for a long time. Atlanta moved around them. The Marietta Street traffic, the sound of the city going about its Tuesday morning, completely indifferent to what was or was not beginning on this sidewalk. "I work a lot," she said finally. "I know," he said. "I have a 2-year-old who removes her shoes in public and yells at strangers' weddings." "I know," he said. "I was there. This is not—" She stopped. "People like you don't—" "Deja," he said. Her name, first time he had used it. She had not told him her name. Beverly, she thought. Beverly was going to have opinions about many things. "I grew up in Atlanta. My grandfather built half of it, and my grandmother cleaned the other half. Not a metaphor. She cleaned offices in Midtown for 11 years, while he was building the company. She is sitting in my kitchen right now eating grits and telling me I am an idiot for not asking you for coffee yesterday." He paused. "She is not wrong." Deja looked at him. Something in her chest, the specific armor that 7 years of professional invisibility and single motherhood and doing everything herself had built, did what it had begun to do in the service corridor. It moved. "Coffee," she said. "Coffee," he confirmed. "Just coffee. Ava can come. Gerald is welcome. I will ensure the bread is warm." Deja looked at him for a moment longer. "She will talk the entire time," Deja said. "She has a lot of opinions." "I noticed," Marcus said. "I'm counting on it." Deja looked down at Ava, who had been standing at her hip this entire conversation, holding Gerald and observing everything with the quiet attention of a child who has learned that adults say interesting things when they forget you are listening. "Ava," Deja said, "this is Marcus." "I know," Ava said. "He didn't marry the mean-face lady." "No," Deja said. "He didn't." Ava looked at Marcus. "Gerald wants to come," she said. "Gerald," Marcus said seriously, "has a standing invitation." Ava nodded, satisfied with this answer. She held up her hand toward Marcus. Not Gerald this time, just her hand. Small and certain, the way children offer things they consider settled. Marcus looked at the small hand. He took it, and the three of them walked down Marietta Street in the Tuesday morning Atlanta light. The billionaire who had left his own wedding, the maid who had worked it, and the 2-year-old who had understood everything first. While the city went about its business around them, loud and indifferent and completely unaware that something small and real and entirely unplanned had just begun on its sidewalk. There is a particular kind of truth that only arrives uninvited, not the truth you go looking for, not the truth you build toward or prepare for or schedule into your life at a time that is convenient. The other kind, the kind that walks into a room in a makeshift apron with one sneaker on and a half-eaten bread roll, and says the thing that 400 people were too polished and too invested and too afraid of the consequences to say. Don't marry her. 3 words. Said by a 2-year-old who had no understanding of engagement announcements or Atlanta Magazine or what it costs to book the 32nd floor of the Sovereign Hotel on a Saturday in Buckhead, who had no understanding of 14 months of planning or family expectations or the particular weight of a Caldwell wedding, who had only the understanding of a child, which is the truest understanding available. She had looked at a man holding a ring and seen what was actually there, not the ceremony, not the performance, not the 400 witnesses, just a man who looked the way her mama looked when she was doing something she did not want to do, and she had said so, because she did not know yet that the truth required permission, because she did not know yet that some rooms were not built for the kind of honesty she carried, because she was 2 years old, and she had Gerald, and she had cold bread, and she had seen something true, and she had said it, and the whole room had shifted. So here is my question for you today, and I want you to sit with it for a moment before you answer. Is there something in your life right now that you are holding, like a ring, like a commitment, like a next step, that you are holding because stopping feels harder than continuing? And is there a small voice somewhere, maybe your own, maybe someone who loves you, that has been trying to tell you something you have not been ready to hear? Listen to it. That voice knows something. Tell me in the comments. I want to hear from you. Every single story in that comment section matters, and I read them all. If today's story moved you, please hit that like button right now. 1 second. It costs you nothing, and it sends this story to someone who needs it today. Subscribe if you have not already, because there are more stories coming, and you do not want to miss a single one. Share this today with someone in your life who needs permission to listen to the small voice, and I will see you in the next one.